today to ask Superintendent Jara and school board trustees to remove CCSD police from our schools.
Outrage at tonight's CCSD Trustees meeting over this video that we first showed you earlier this month. It captures a school police officer slamming a Durango High School student to the ground while others were handcuffed just off campus. Since that video surfaced, organizations like the NAACP have taken up the students' cause.
And tonight, they, along with CCSD families, spoke to trustees to demand accountability. Fox 5's Drew Andre was at that meeting tonight. He has more on what was said. Drew?
Well, and John, to the disappointment of many, that incident was not on the agenda, but the end of the meeting was the opportunity for community members, parents, students, and teachers to speak directly to the trustees.
And we're not being heard, and no action is being taken.
A chance to express serious concerns and demand action in person.
But it's still an internal investigation and not an independent one.
The aggressive takedown of a 14-year-old student at Durango High caught on camera. Sparked protests outside CCSD headquarters last week, demanding a swift investigation, the officers firing, and reform in the school police department.
As a teacher, if I were to body slam a child to the ground, I would surely lose my job instantly.
Some alleging this is far from the first instance of excessive use of force by CCSD officers.
We never really talk about accountability for the police in schools. We never kind of step back and ask ourselves, are these cops in schools making kids feel safer?
CCSD Superintendent Jesus Jara called for a review of the police department's use of force policies last week, and organizers have met with district and police leaders. Chief Mike Blackeye said a complete and thorough investigation in accordance with the law, policy, and collective bargaining agreements must occur. Anything less would be a disservice to all parties involved. But parents like Jessica Orta say it's unacceptable that 2 weeks after the incident, trustees are not discussing it in a public forum.
They could have said, you know, we do not condone this level of violence, but instead they have been silenced, and we all know that silence equals consent.
And over the last 2 weeks, Fox 5 has reached out to the trustees for an interview, but have not gotten any responses. John?
Drew, thanks. The officer seen in the video has been reassigned and is not working in the field, pending the outcome of the investigation.